Hey there, fellow adventurers. Welcome to Tryst with a Werewolf. Are you ready to step into a world where the line between human and beast blurs? Here, Husquin. We'll uncover the hidden tales of werewolves, their forbidden love, and their wild adventures. So, come along and let's embark on this thrilling tryst together. Chapter 26 supplies third eye for bullets. Then N and I walked in silence for an hour, until my back started bleeding with the effort of walking and the forgotten stitches. He sat me down and quietly worked cleaning and setting the area. After we started walking again, I spoke up a question as he helped me climb up a tall bank. Then N. I wasn't sure how to ask with the few words he knew. I want to learn your whole name. He lifted me by the waist and plopped me up on the top of the shelf before climbing up himself. When he began the walk again, I grabbed his arm and had him stop to look at me. Hi, my name is Eleanor Stevens. I tapped his heart and made my voice low and manly. Hi, my name is that N. Smile lines appeared at his eyes and the tip of his lips smirked up surely in appreciation to my awesome guy voice. So what is it? Eleanor. Then N, THH. He twisted from me and started walking again. Then N, I complain with sadness. I want to know how to say it. Kane said it. But he only walked on. So I did too. 20 paces further. He spoke. Yen a wathin do. My pace quickened. That's Spidey. My faded mate. White splashed around me and my wind spun with the beat of the heady techno music the DJ was playing. Yen a wathin do. He chuckled and spoke again when I caught up. Yen a wathin do. It took a good 20 minutes, but he was patient with me until I was able to correctly use the intonations and vowels. We were still walking, but he turned and caught my eye, giving me a sunny smile. I smiled back. Nice to meet Yen a wathin do. He held his hand out, but not to shake. More like in the Victorian movies where the man might kiss the woman's hand. My stomach heated in anticipation, and I placed my hand to his. Instead, his fingers moved around mine until he was holding my hand. He grinned with a wink. Then my insides flooded like a hormonal teenager, and I finally knew we were okay. He then learned my whole name, but it barely took him 2 minutes to get mine right. Eleanor Stevens. He smirked down to me, still holding my hand. I like Elle. I told him. Hearing him say Eleanor felt strange now, like I was always Elle. But his voice around my full name was intensely sexy and caused a zing down my spine. The sun was near setting when I tugged on Manen's hand. Sleep. We were in a perfect little clearing with a great place for a fire. His brow furrowed, looking straight on for a moment, then he watched over the position of the sky. He nodded at some unheard thought and he softened and turned to me. He smiled. Eyes. No see. I asked, confused. It looked like a good spot to stop to me. I didn't know what he was seeing that made it bad, but I would trust his judgment. Okay? I started stepping away, ready to keep walking. He was suddenly in front of me and I bumped straight into him. Goodness, then N. I laughed, hands gliding up his chest. You have to stop moving like that. You're too fast. Now see, he said again, a boyish humor to his words. Then he put his hand over my eyes, forcing them closed. Now see. Oh, okay. I can close my eyes. What are you doing? He moved his hand away, but I kept my eyes closed. Like this. That's Spidey. My faded mate. White splashed around me and my wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. And then he swept me up into his arms. Then I squawked in surprise and laughed. He playfully scowled. Now see, I had opened my eyes. Oops, sorry. I closed and held my arms around his neck, and then he was running. I barely even knew he was. He ran so fluidly, Even with me in his arms, that mostly a breeze of wind alerted me. Maybe it was like when I rode the back of my boyfriend's motorcycle in high school. Motion, yes, but ultimately a smooth ride. I knew I was moving, but it wasn't bouncing. I tucked myself deeper into the end's shoulder, snuggling into his warmth. It was probably a good thing he had me close my eyes. I'm sure it would be like a crazy roller coaster if I opened them, and with how I got so motion sick with that other wolf, I'd prefer not to puke on him when he got where he wanted. After about 20 minutes and the air cooling with the sun finally sliding behind the mountain, he slowed. Eyes? Merci, he cautioned. I nodded my agreement, and he placed me down on the ground. His fingers moved to around my eyes. The ground was squishy under my feet like soft grass. Can I open yet? He moved around to my back and placed a hand over my opposite shoulder. Yes, see. His husky voice whispered to my ear and fingers pulled away from my eyes. I opened and let my eyes adjust. In front of me was my wheelbarrow. My wheelbarrow. My earth things. I stood stock, still taking in the sight. My bin of emergency supplies. My bin of collected food. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. It was there. All my things. He had brought me to my things. It felt like the best gift I'd ever been given. Then N was watching me with heavy eyes, and I hadn't even twitched in a whole minute of staring out. He asked carefully, like I was porcelain. I finally broke out of the stupor and just nodded. My eyes started watering, joyful tears holding in my eyes like pools. When one drop overflowed, I broke loose. My head dropped to my hands to catch the tears, and I bent to a crouch. My body was heaving with silent tears, and suddenly then N was bent beside me. His warm hand was held softly at my back. I'll cry. I'll hurt. I'll no happy. No. I hiccuped. I lifted my head to him and made a wide smile. Happy. Very happy. I leaned to him and wrapped my arms around his neck, tightening myself to him. He held me close, calming down my hair. Thank you. Happy. I spoke to his chest. He let me stay like that until I composed myself. When I was well enough, I squeezed him again, then went to check through my supplies. My thermal cooker was right out on top, and I wanted to hug it. We could have soup again. Soup. Oh, in my sleeping bag. I cuddled it against my face. My flashlight. My saw and bucket. My perimeter fence. My cell phone charger. Bullets. I sighed like heaven. Bullets. I took a moment and moved a good handful into my pouch with the cell. I won't forget you, my lovelies. I went through my tools and moved on to the food bin, grabbing a water bottle and downing it. I was nearly crying again. The Nen's water pouch was great, but it always gave off a musty taste. I missed my plastic bottles. Then N and I looked through the food bin, and it seemed that those Ed rodents had a good dinner with the abandoned bin. We threw most of it away. I pouted as he chucked the rest of the carrots into the trees. AWW, I complained. Those tasted so good. At least I could get more. I held out my precious box of matches. Should we make a fire? He stood and circled the area. After a full look, he pointed at a tree. Sleep. I nodded. Tree is okay. I turned on my flashlight and made a happy sigh. I didn't even care that I was wasting the last of my batteries when there was still enough light to see. It was like a safety, like a child clutching a teddy bear. A flashlight was my happiness. He chuckled and started digging through his basket for our dinner. A permanent smile was on my face as I nibbled through jerky and potatoes, just staring at my supplies. After a long while, I looked to then N and gave a soft smile. Thanks for getting me back here. Thank you. Wheelbarrow. He flashed a smile and nodded. Although we had been intimate in the same day, we had barely held hands since, so I wasn't sure what his position with me anymore was. So I went to sit close, tapped my fingers together, and sighing, kiss. His glance dipped to my lips and my heart sped as he leaned close. I closed my eyes, waiting for him, and his lips hovered over mine. Eleanor. My breath hitched at my full name spoken so deeply and open-hooded eyes. Yene wathandu, I answered. He grinned and captured my face in his hand and pulled me to his kiss. The happiness that surrounded me with him was eternal. Like stars coming together, two beings of different planets were meant to be. I didn't want to be the silly romantic that said I felt like I knew him my whole life, but this me was a whole new life. And he'd been there through most of it. He pulled away and leaned his forehead against mine. His voice now heavy and forlorn. He was unhappy. With a sigh, he spoke. Mate. I giggled. He was not expecting that reaction and sat back in question. He was probably expecting a fight when he talked about Mazadu again. I held out my ponytail. Don't make me cut my hair, Thor. I'd be super mad. I giggled again and followed him, straddling over his lap. I was sick of hearing about that and handing me off, and I'd no longer hear of it. Wrapping my hands over his jaw, I smiled and started setting soft pecks across his cheeks. My voice was low. No maza, only then N. I then kissed him, biting his bottom lip. Why don't we break in my sleeping bag before we go up in the tree? His eyes started to look at the large tree. I stood off his lap and grabbed his wrists, lifting him to a stand. Come on, handsome. I winked. He smirked and let me guide him. We never made it to the tree that night, so I woke tangled around him. The cool of the morning was reminding my shoulder that we never refreshed the healing paste after dinner. I didn't want to move from my snuggled spot, but the thought of having my supplies back and having my ibuprofen had me to a stand. Then N's eyes widened and he sat up in a flash. My hands opened in calm. Oh, sorry. I just wanted medicine. You can sleep. He softened. Medicine. Yeah. I started digging around until I found the bottle in my purse. I downed, and though I knew it was absurd, instantly felt the pain at my shoulder lessen. Placebo effect wrought. He was up now and digging through his own pack and brought out his bowl of paste. And while placebo effect was awesome, I would happily bathe in his white healing concoction. So when he pointed at the sleeping bag and signed it, I immediately obeyed. He washed off the area and refreshed the stitches and paste, then started roaming my back and arms with delicate fingertips. It was a sweet movement, soft, joyful touches that brought me sighing in contentment. His hands moved to my hair and started combing through the strands with his fingers. I had always liked people playing with my hair, and his touch was more divine than I could have guessed. Relaxing and beautiful. Even when he got to a tangle, he was gentle, releasing the locks from their grip, and soon my hair was smoothed all the way throughout. I looked soft eyes up at him with a sweet smile. He grinned and helped me up, holding my extra shirt out to me. Thanks. I took it and was so glad to have another Earth shirt to wear. A change of clothes was going to rock. Chapter 27, an Alpha come in third eye for bullets. We started walking back Maza's way, though I refused to ever acknowledge that we were going to Maza. In my mind, we were heading to Molly and her kids, and that was all. We had barely made it to midday when the wheelbarrow finally fell from my grasp. My shoulder had been screaming for the last hour. I took a tumble over it and got a few bruises, but nothing serious. Tell back to the Nen. I might as well have jumped from a plane without a parachute. He dropped my boxes and ran to pick me up from the fall. El hurt. I instinctively bent into him and nodded. Shoulder. My shoulder hurts. I don't think I can carry the wheelbarrow anymore with my arm like this. I was sure an ice pack would be better for muscle pain like mine, but heat would help my sanity. So I grabbed his hand and placed it over the shirt at my shoulder. Help. Hand. Say. I told him, and he rubbed softly as I bit my lip. That's okay. I nodded, eyes closing in hurt. After a few minutes of his warmth, I got up and took another ibuprofen. But as I downed it, I knew the wheelbarrow was toast. I broke the nails out of the handle and crunched half of the vines to hold the items in. It was fixable, but I knew it wouldn't matter. With my jacked up shoulder, I couldn't hold it anymore anyway. So I pick and chose what to keep from my tools and said goodbye to the rest, like I said goodbye to my truck. Goodbye hammer, goodbye handsaw, shovel, and screwdrivers. I think I can make do without you. Then N put my sleeping bag in his basket, and I carried my thermal cooker with my good arm. My left shoulder was bound to get tired with carrying both the rifle and cooker, but I was not leaving my cooker. I moved most of the things from my purse to my pouch and abandoned it in Gia's bags. My second change of clothes and a few other supplies were already in the second bin, but I feared that maybe coming back to get my supplies was a stupid idea. If I couldn't carry them, should we have really trekked a whole week out of our way? Molly and the other ladies were probably faring just fine with that earth stuff. Maybe I didn't need mine either. With the lack of extra weight on my arms, we were able to move faster than before. Scratch that. I was able to move faster, and N was still going strong at whatever tempo my walk was at. When dusk was moving in, then N's ears perked and he stopped us. "What is?" was all I got out, before one of his hands held up to quiet me. He slowly put down my bins and rolled the basket off his back, so I followed suit and put down my cooker and readied my rifle. "Come," he whispered and stepped through the underbrush like a ghost. Every step of mine crunched some leaf or twig, but he didn't complain. He just inched us forward through the forest. He had guided us about 50 yards away and peered around one tall evergreen tree. He caught my eye and sighed. "Meat. I'll kill." He then pointed around the tree. I made a hesitant face. He was hoping that I'd shoot something for dinner, but my aim was not up for the count anymore. However, I guess I'd have to relearn sometime. I nodded my understanding and peeked around at the animal. There was a large antelope deer thing nibbling grass, some 100 feet away. He was tall and had wide antlers like an elk, with a small head and pointy cheeks, but a long thin neck. Vertical stripes of wide brown and red crossed his torso, and he wasn't paying me any attention. It would have been an easy shot for me last week, but with my shoulder all I could do was hope. Lifting my rifle, I set my sight and timed my breaths. I pulled the trigger. 33 bullets. The recoil of the gun blasted into my shoulder and I cried out in pain, knocking myself nearly to the ground. Venom caught me before I hit and lowered me to my knees. "I'll hurt." I was holding my good hand over my shoulder and cringing away the pain. Speaking through clenched teeth and watering eyes, I looked up to the N. "I'm fine." But the shot wasn't true. I hit his thigh. "No kill." "Then N go. You have to go hunt him." His eyes flicked to the spot the antelope ran from. "I'll hurt." "I'm okay. Then go kill meat." He was still hesitant. "Go. I wouldn't have the animal suffer." He nodded and took off, immediately disappearing into silence. When he was gone, I took some long deep breaths, trying to get a hold on my pain. I just needed to work through it. It would be fine in a minute. After a few minutes, I was healing better. I worked through the stiffness in my shoulder, trying to roll it out, and then N appeared back at my side. But I jolted because he was in wolf form. "But N." I hollered, not prepared for a giant wolf to be hovering over me. His wolf eyes wide, and then he dropped the antelope from his teeth and took off in shame. "Wait." I cried and followed after. Then N. He was nearly gone in for steps, and I tried to catch up. I put all the power I could behind my words. "Stop. Come back here." And he halted like he hit bricks. He stopped and turned his head back to me, but he was already too far for me to see his facial expression. Then, in the biggest surprise of all, he started trotting back to me. When he came upon me, his eyes were lowered in concern and watching my every move. His muscles twitched like he wanted to bail at any moment. "It's okay," I soothed. "Thanks for coming back." I grinned wide and took his form in. Dark gray with black patches, silvers threaded between glimmering in the sunlight. "You are beautiful," I told him sincerely. Biting my lip, I held a hand out. "May I touch you?" His head retreated from my hand, but his legs didn't move, much like his paws were stuck with glue. I put my hand down. "I'm not afraid of you. El no scared werewolf." The wolf's eye slit head as if trying to sense the lie. But in another moment, his muscles softened and he bowed his head before me. A wide beam developed over my face. "I'm taking that as I can touch you then, N," and raised my hand to the hair between his ears. Just his eyes shot up to me, and I began stroking his fur, feeling the softness between my fingers like tufts of silk. I slid up over his ears and scratched around the base like my dog used to like. He must have liked it too because his head bent slightly to my direction. It made me giggle and his head lifted, making us nearly eye to eye. "Your wolf is amazing." I moved my hand down around his neck and torso and felt the coarse fur there. It was thick and full like a perfect coat for winter. I went clear around his other side and then crouched to get a look at his front paws. They were as wide as tree trunks, and razor-sharp black nails like talons came from each finger bone. "Wow," I spoke awestruck and rubbed down one. I was careful to not get close to the point, but I guess the Nen didn't like me even that close because he gave a warning growl and stepped away. I just stood straight and smiled. "Thank you." I rubbed over his cheek and his eyes began to sparkle. He nodded. "Can you understand me in this form? Or are you more animal?" I wasn't sure how I would even get human then and to understand that question, so I just dropped it. He then let his tongue roll out of his mouth in a very friendly dog-like attitude. It caused me another giggle. "You're so funny. El like werewolf." He pressed his nose into the crook of my neck and huffed a hot breath across me. I backed up with a laugh and rubbed the tickle away. "Good werewolf." I patted his head in before he could get mad at me. I stepped into him and hugged around his neck. He gave a shocked yelp, but I just hugged tighter until his wolfy head wrapped me in his own version of a hug. It was so warm and protective, like nothing could ever hurt me, and I was delighted. "I love you then, Ed," slipped out into his fur. When I realized what I had said, I stepped back embarrassed. "Oh, sorry. Well, I guess you should go change and then we eat him." His eyes were like stars set on me but slowly moved to where the crumpled antelope fell. He nodded and ran off in the other direction. The next morning, I reached for the N and he was no longer sharing the sleeping bag. Yawning, I opened my eyes and sat up, scanning the area for him. But he had already gone for his morning disappear. I stretched and went for my morning break too. When I came back to camp, my nose was picking up a scent that told me Thanksgiving dinner was coming. I didn't know what it was, but it was making my stomach crumble with anticipation. Some part of my brain told me something more delicious than freshly baking bread was to be found. I just needed to search it out. Wandering around the campsite, I kept inhaling deep and long, repeatedly bringing the scent in. My senses were crap, but I kept going until I found myself standing at the antelope carcass that N had hung in a tree the night before. My mouth salivated when the smell was right before me. I spoke unconvinced to the raw chunk of meat. That was no fresh warm bread. That was no turkey smothered with cranberry sauce. My stomach said shovel in now, but my brain started backing out. Sure, antelope tasted good for dinner, but it was just like any old steak. Nothing was all that special that I should be wanting to bury my face in right now. But I did. Well, okay then, Belly. If you're that starving. Weirdo. Can't even wait for the end to return. I grabbed my hunting knife and placed my cooking pot on the small fire. I cut off a long strip from the leg and had to gulp back my mouth, preparing for the tastiness before me. Now, I wasn't squeamish around raw meat, but I never liked to have it in my hands. Yet in this instance my fingers started rubbing through the meat like a smooth clay. It made me wonder what it would feel like in my mouth. I eyed the pot warming on the fire, ready for a steak to be cooked, and my whole body rejected the idea. It was complete revolt. I wanted to try it raw. The little devil on my shoulder started whispering in my ear. Remember how good that tasted raw? And this smells so much better than it did. What wouldn't cook a antelope be like? I warred with myself. The angel yelled back. Don't be stupid. You were sick for a whole day. You ought to be puking again. Noise. Noise. Then N would kill me if he knew what I was contemplating. I looked up and scanned the trees as if I were a child, making sure my father wouldn't catch me grabbing an extra helping of cookies. And then when there was no sight of the N, I brought the raw steak to my lips and took a small forbidden nibble from the top. Just a small bite to see what it tasted like. I couldn't get that sick from just a half nibble. I'd eat the rest cooked, but with the single piece my mind exploded in satisfaction. Oh my goodness, I moaned as the piece rolled around my mouth. It was so good. I even closed my eyes, savoring the taste. Buttery and soft, just the right amount of chew, and a hardness at the back of my mouth that brightened the flavor just well enough. And then, I was in paradise, so I ate another bite, and another, and another. I couldn't help myself. And before my brain could catch up, I had eaten through the whole steak and was licking the excess juices from my fingertips. I even turned back to the meat for another slice when the N walked into my view instead. L, he greeted and I jumped with shock, nearly falling backward. I said a little too enthusiastically, shoving my hands in my pockets like he could see my disobedience. If he knew what I just did, I'd get my butt kicked in that had me all sorts of obvious. I wasn't doing anything, just having some breakfast. Yum, yum, yum. I then rolled my hands over my stomach. I ran to the fire and grabbed the pot out like I'd already cooked it and now just needed to clean up. Don't worry about me, just putting breakfast dishes away. He chuckled amused and then lifted me to stand beside him. L, he purred my name and then opened his fingers, revealing more joy. Another ring. I looked up to him and grinned. The pot forgotten. It's beautiful. I grabbed it from him and examined it. It was a completely stone ring, carved from a crystalline pink rock, glittering and faceted like a diamond. My words were hushed. Wow, it's gorgeous. I placed it on, until it fit perfectly over my middle finger. I beamed to the N and then back down to watch the light bounce off it. He sent to beam back and caressed my face to look at him. Angia yakut hande. Eleanor. I giggled and went back to watching the glitters. I love it. A ripple of a growl came from his throat and he turned and walked a few steps away. Then N. I asked his retreating frame. You okay? He spoke forlorn to the horizon. Ngi fane njeik ut hi amikund. I'm sorry. I offered, but wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. He turned back around and gave a sad fake smile. L good. Okay. I was confused and he gave a true grin. He walked the distance between us and took my face in his hands and lifted me to kiss him. I even rolled to tiptoe to melt into his kiss, soft lips against mine, chaste and sweet. Then he pulled back and gave me another kiss to my forehead. My butterflies swarmed, twisting the raw antelope meat around, and I suddenly remembered what naughty thing I had done. My face reddened and he watched the color flood and grinned red. I giggled, being caught red-handed. Or red-faced. Yes, that's red. I should not have taught you colors. He chuckled and then reached for my hand. I let him entwine our fingers and then he grabbed the pink ring and pulled it from my finger. Hey, no. I complained. I want that one. And I grabbed it quickly from him before he chucked it to the woods. KFAKU's Benzai. USA Funny. He asked dubious. No touchy. I wagged a pointer finger in front of his face and then replaced the ring. He grinned with creases at his eyes. It made him all the more handsome and he took my hand, kissing over the ring. My breath stopped and I watched him, waiting for me to get the next kiss. It didn't come. He released my hand and strode over to the antelope and tore a leg from the thigh joint. He winked at me and then sat down across the fire and started to eat. But then my glance dipped to his breakfast and I had to look away for a different reason. I turned clear around. What was wrong with me? Dude, last time you ate raw meat you were puking everywhere. You are going to be deader than dead meat when then N realizes you ate more. I was so stupid. I gave a few good pounds to my head to clear the buttery raw meat from my memory. When my new ring knocked against me, I then grinned and went to watch it instead. If I concentrated hard enough on the rain, I wouldn't be tempted with the weird deer anymore. I hoped it was true. Chapter 28, Hail 33 Bullets. A whole day later and we'd been walking with overhead clouds all day. It was a nice break from the pounding sun. I had been in the middle of telling a childhood story about my brother and I fighting like Tasmanian devils over who got to be Mario when the N stopped dead in his tracks. The N, I asked, turning his way. Something W are on. And before I could even get out the whole word, I was in his arms and he was running like we'd just shot out of a roller coaster. No, see. The wind was already blowing like a tornado around us, so I obeyed into his chest, covering myself. I grabbed at my ponytail and tucked it between us, so it wouldn't fly all over. What's going on? Cold rain, he shouted through his sprint. Cold rain, I questioned. And that's when I started hearing the bouncing. It was like stones being thrown behind us, whistling through the air, again and again. I opened my eyes to peek over his shoulder and he tightened his hold now. He said get and something sharp scraped across my wrist. I didn't cry out but tucked myself in against the N's chest. The sound then boomed around us. It was like 3 thunderclouds converging right on top of us. Suddenly the heavens opened and crashing sounds happened all around us. I could hear tree limbs being broken, whistling shooting past us as then N would dodge something, rocks pounding the ground. Booms and hits, winds crackling, thunder yelling. I didn't dare look, the sounds being scary enough. 2 more scrapes went down my back, and 1 glided off my head. I whimpered into the N. And Giad Bona and Oyok Hos Law. Bamba contain. And in another minute we were falling and the sounds eased slightly. We were stopped. He sighed and squeezed me tight for a moment, that my head was still spinning and my stomach lurched. I tapped him quick and pointed down. Please. Down. Quickly. My eyes dashed around the room, but with no bucket handy I just twisted to a wall and was sick. He cried and was at my side, a worn hand at my lower back. Another round of sickness was my answer. I bent to my knees and groaned. It had been more than 24 hours since the raw meat, but it ultimately caught up with my roller coaster ride. When I finally opened my eyes, I widened in a scare. Then N was covered in crossing scratches. Not many were deep, but all seeped at least some blood. I went to grab his arm when he caught my head instead. El hurt. His thumb rolled over my hair in distress. His demeanor changed to fear as he brought back a reddened hando. I called out to all the blood and put my own hand to my head. It was sticky but not that painful. Still a stupid "oh" came out of me, but more of an automatic reaction rather than really hurt. I squished up my face and probed the cut. It was small. He paled and I backtracked. Oh, it's okay then, Anne. Little hurt. Little hurt. That hurt gives lots of blood. It's not as bad as it seems. I grabbed the shirt from over my head and pressed it to the cut. It's okay. I tried to calm him. See better. He bit on my wrist and then twisted my back. They did feel like cuts, but it was more like the stain of cat scratches. Hurt, he said again. I'm okay. I turned with a gentle smile. The nun, however, had taken the brunt of the hits. 100 slices crossed his arms and back. The one down his cheek was dripping, so I took off my shirt bandage and ripped the sleeve to tap at his cheek. He caught my hand and kissed my wrist over the scratch there. It's just a scratch. I smiled. I then turned around and we were in some sort of mud underground hut. Like a hogan. Dried red mud walls. A good large room with shelves at the back, filled with pottery and storage. A rag rug at the floor the size of an N, like it was once someone's bed. A wooden ladder showing to the outside next to a pile of wood. But as I looked to the upper doorway, I paled. I stepped forward and took a few steps up the ladder to look out. The land was being attacked by giant hail. Trees were being beaten down. Punches went through leaves like jelly. Craters were being blown into the soft grass. The giant raindrops that had imprisoned Gia and I had become ice, and it looked straight out of an Armageddon movie. An ice chunk hit on a rock and rebounded right at me. I ducked just in time in fright, but it came crashing into the shelter. Then N picked it up, and though it looked like an apricot in his large hand, it was nearly the size of a grapefruit. Hail. My voice cracked with the sound of another thunderbolt booming across the sky. My body hit a cut and my mouth flooded with saliva. Oh shoot. I knew what was next. Calm down, calm down, calm down, calm down. I breathed out of my mouth for a moment, until the sick sensation was lowering. I climbed back down and ran to hold onto the N's side, seeking comfort. He dropped the ice chunk and wrapped arms around me like a parent consoling a broken child. Without the N's help, I would have been killed by that storm. One ice chunk to the head would have had me out. Another hiccup forced from me and I held the sick back. I really wished I had some water to wash out my mouth right about now. I leaned out and looked at the pottery at the back. Think any of those have water? His nostrils flared as he brought a breath, and then he went and pushed a large pot from the floor away and grabbed one behind it. He opened it to a full jug of water and a ladle. Oh, thank goodness. I stepped to it and rinsed, then had a deep drink. Thank you. He nodded and replaced the ladle and top. I looked around the hut and asked my question aloud. Who do you think lives here? He grabbed some logs and sat down at the blackened spot on the floor near the door. I sighed and sat on the rug, bringing my knees to my chin as I listened to the cracking happening outside. Over the next few minutes, then N had a fire raging and the warmth began to calm the room. He searched through the pots and brought out a pouch of dried fruit for me. I wasn't hungry seeing the ice chunks still causing havoc outside, but knew I needed the calories to stay out of shock. So I started nibbling. When he was satisfied, I'd eat. He continued his search until he found some thick jerky. We both had finished our meal in silence and he lifted me to his lap, cradling me across his body. It was so calming and needed. He took the rifle from my back and placed it on the ground. I sat up, an immediate worry on my face being without my weapon, and he smoothed over my cheeks. Kulanai Eliel. Veil up, mule. I nodded to whatever his reassuring words were and leaned back into his shoulder. He rocked me softly until I fell asleep, the shock of the day zapping my energy. It took 3 days for the hail to stop, and each day I got sicker and sicker. Stupid raw meat. I wasn't throwing up anymore, but the moment I moved, my head would roll and my whole body would go nauseous, and I was fevering like crazy. By the 3rd day, the Ned had me on my back on the rag rug next to the fire with the blankets he found in the shelves over me, but I was still cold. The only time I'd feel okay was when he was curled around me, and while I'd love him to be my heater 24/7, he still had to trek into the hail to get water, firewood, or food. The worst part was when he brought home a fresh kill and my mouth was watering to eat more raw stinking meat. Wasn't it bad enough that I'd been non-moving for 3 days? I needed to extend that by begging for more. I was stupid, but not stupid enough to get caught eating raw again. So I just pouted around every mouthful of cooked meat. Tough gross jerk. I mumbled to the handful and then laid back down. I guess a good part of taking a few days break was my wounds were starting to heal. Staying off my injuries for 3 days was making it so that my energy was going to healing and not walking. My shoulder wasn't looking much better, but I could move it a bit more. The other bites, Scratches, burns, and cut skull were nothing but eyesores now. Then Anne hopped down in the hut with my plastic bin. I sat up quickly and excited. Then Anne. You found my... Oh, my head rolled and I laid back down. His expression turned worried and he set the bin down and kneeled beside me. Okay. I gave a forced smile. Yeah, I'm all right. You found my stuff. He smiled and turned back to the bin. The plastic had a major crack down the side and no cover, so I guess the hail did a number to it too. Manen grabbed a washcloth and dipped it in a water pot, wetting over my forehead. No sick. I think I'm feeling better. Can I go outside? I pointed to the door where I could see dark clouds, but no hail. He nodded. Ye bow. Is I he fo sipi lyle. I went to sit up and he pushed me back down. But I thought, can I go outside? I'll go out. No, he answered quickly. I'll sit. I'll stay. I sighed and watched a broken tree branch sway in the wind. But I want fresh air. Medicine. He spoke instead. I nodded. Yeah, I guess that's wise. I turned to my belly and he climbed the ladder just enough to reach his basket that was outside. I smiled over my hands to him. You went to find the good medicine. Thank you. He found the green leaf medicine in the stored pots and used it the last few days. But nothing worked the magic that the white paste did. I let him work his magic with new stitches and the numbing paste and side content as it began to work. While the white dried, he continued his treatment around my back and down my legs and massaging swirls. When he stopped, he kissed my hair and then stood to check the fire. After I could actually move, I sat up and smiled dreamily. Manen. He grinned back and acknowledged before going back to poke around the fire rail. Come here. I pointed to the spot beside me. He crawled over and sat beside me. I came and straddled over his lap and caressed his face, fingertips following every curve. Thanks for taking care of me. He panned over my hair and looked deep into my eyes. Nuho ke hulu. I didn't know what he said, but how it was said with that rich dark voice had me leaning in and kissing him. He followed for only a second, before he grabbed my arms and set me back a few inches. No. I'm sick. I pouted. I'm not feeling sick. I got a little suggestive and rubbed down his chest. Actually, I'm feeling pretty good. Maybe we should. He captured my hand before it continued any further south. No. I jiggled and leaned against him, pressing our bodies together and trailing my lips over his ear. Yes, no, but it was said with a tilt of his head and lacked conviction. Yes, I whispered huskily, then gave love nips down his neck. The next instant I was on my back with an hovering over me. I giggled again and pulled his face to mine. Off and on for another 2 days I was sick, but was starting to feel better. The nauseating feeling would kick me to the ground out of nowhere. I was walking around topside, getting water from a nearby stream when I suddenly just needed to lay down. Or when we were playing a game of tic-tac-toe and the dirt at the hut and a wave flew over me. Once I nearly passed out coming down the ladder, but each time then N was there to help me lay down. He'd bring me a cool cloth for my head and rub my feet until I felt better. The 6th day in the hut, I was finally feeling good enough that I felt like I could walk again. All right, I was pushing myself, but babies, I really wanted to get to Molly. I needed Earth Girls. I needed gossip. That Anne wasn't excited about the idea of me moving but followed along after I just chose a direction and went. The walking was slow and then Anne wouldn't let me carry anything. He didn't even want me to carry my rifle, but I fought him for it. It was my protection if the net ever was gone or got hurt. Now that my shoulder was a few more days healed, I really wanted to try to shoot again, but with 33 bullets left, I was squeamish to use them for target practice. I had to have too many stops as I got dizzy, but then N was patient. I really wanted him to just pick me up and carry me to Molly, but I was afraid that would make me puke again. Fast movement still put me down. We probably only traveled half of what I could on one of our first days when I was lugging the wheelbarrow loaded with stuff, but I was happy to be moving at all. Being crammed in a single-room hut while the land got pummeled around you was a great way to become intensely claustrophobic. But now we were out under the stars again, back living on potatoes and jerky. Chapter 29, Hot. 33 bullets out. Tap, tap. L tap, tap, tap. I groaned the sleep away and opened my eyes to the sun rising over the treetops below, my back warm from being pressed against the net all night. Smiling at the lovely sight, I twisted on our high branch to see him. Marakspari, my fainted mate. White flashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. He grinned and threaded his fingers through my hair. It was probably a tangled mess after another night in a tree. I pressed it down. You should really let me at least put it in a braid. Or buy me a brush. Hot hot. I giggled with sleepiness still pressed around me. What's hot? My hair. I threaded my own fingers down a lock, but it felt fine to me. He beamed wide. A happiness that took his entire body. Baby hot. Baby hot. I wondered. What do you mean, baby hot? Baby hot. Baby hot. He sat forward in excitement. My voice turned to a little seductive teasing. Oh yeah. Is your baby so hot? I sure am. Sexy. The Nen leaned forward and pressed his hand low on my abdomen, just under my belly button. He looked over his hand and smiled fondly. Baby hot. He sighed in a joyful breath. Get your hands away. Not in a tree, Thor. I playfully smacked his hand away from where I was sure his naughty fingers were headed and leaned in for a kiss. He kissed me back with passion, suiting me forward against him, hands holding my back steady. He then broke away and leaned his head back against the tree trunk, eyes closing in his grin. Happy, but not happy. I kissed his cheek. Me too, big guy. So what do you say we get some breakfast and then back on the road? Eat, walk. His head dashed back up, eyes worried. Walk. No walk. Hurt baby. Hurt baby. I asked, confused. How could a walk hurt baby? What baby? I already told him I couldn't get pregnant. Molly and May's kids would hurt. I don't understand. No, I'll hurt baby-o. This was about the implant again. I poked at the rod. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't think I'd need to get pregnant to save a dying race. I mean, who really thinks about that when they buy birth control? I chuckled to myself. Anyway, I'm hungry. Can we eat? He nodded and I scooted back on the branch and laid my body down to the next level to start my descent. Cha, he yelled and I glanced at him. It was his word for no. What did I do? No hurt. I looked around for what branch was going to stab me, when instead I was swept up into his arms. Oh. I laughed and then smiled at his beautiful eyes. I held around his neck. Okay, sure. I wouldn't mind an elevator. I snickered. We were pretty high up. He kissed my cheek and then painstakingly climbed down, making sure not a single branch even got close to touching me. He hopped down the last few feet but still carried me over to our things. I stretched and threaded my arms behind my head. This is the life. Next, feed me grapes and fan me with palm leaves. Please. I chuckled at my imagination of me on a throne somewhere as a Cleopatra wannabe. He sat me down elegantly on a nice-sized rock and tucked a strand over my ear. Nuhal. Thanks for the ride, I said sweetly and then tried to stand to go to our food. He pushed me back to the rock before I got half a foot off. Then help. All right. I laughed in confusion. What's with you? He brought out some jerky and veggies for breakfast and we sat to eat. He kept glancing over my body and smiling. You're being funny, I told him with a reciprocated smile. He finished his bite and stood, coming over and giving me a quick peck. Stay. I nodded. Yeah. Get out of here, Rambo. And he disappeared into the brush. A few minutes later, when I took my excursion into the bush, I noticed the metal of my jeans button and zipper were hot to the touch as I dropped my pants. But it wasn't until I tried to zip back up that I realized that my stomach was flaming hot. What the? I stood tall and started walking back to camp. But I touched again, right below my belly button. It was really hot, like fresh bowl of soup hot. It felt great on my hands, but it was really freaking wacky that a fever could be centralized right at my belly. What was going on? Baby hot. Bad Spidey, my fated mate. White splashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. My trek froze. What the freak did he mean by baby hot? I wasn't pregnant. The implant was like 99.99% effective. This was not a 0.01%. Then I yelled at the top of my lungs. Emergency. I felt the spot again. It sure as heck felt like that was where a womb could be. Then it appeared in a rush before me. Wolf form. What is the meaning of this? I pointed at my belly. Hot baby. Hot baby. What the heck do you mean, hot baby? He shifted human. Dumb Tarzan strips. And walked toward me, sinking to his knees and front me with a grin over his whole face. It even caused smile lines at his eyes. His hands roamed over the front of my jeans. Baby. No. No, baby. Medicine, remember. I tapped the rod. He hugged around my waist, bringing his ear to me. Dude. Boundaries. I'm not pregnant. He looked up, same grin lighting his face. Baby. Baby. Mouth Spidey. My fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Baby. I nearly stepped back with shock. Molly was hot with her babies. He nodded. Molly hot no. That couldn't be. I had the implant. It was going to take 3 years to have a baby. And we had one in days. I wasn't even due with a period for another week. Being pregnant right now was absurd. No one did tell that soon. But this wasn't a human baby. What if human birth control? Oh no. My heart dropped. Was I? My sister-in-law. When she was pregnant, she had morning sickness. I hadn't been throwing up. Just that once after my roller coaster ride. Not upchucking everything 10 times a day. But you had been on the ground for a week because of nausea. Eleanor. Not every pregnant woman has to throw up. Oh shoot. Morning sickness. Check. And cravings. Oh my gosh. I want raw meat. Cravings. Check. What else were her symptoms? I racked my brain. What? Itchy boobs. See her. I wasn't pregnant. I didn't have itchy. And as if it were a self-fulfilling prophecy, my chest begged to be scratched. Nuts. Was that it? I was pregnant. Wasn't I? With an alien's baby. I mean, without a pregnancy test in this period. I shouldn't be able to know. Right. But that heat. I touched over the heat again and then M's hands came to lay over mine. Heat surrounded my hands. The same heat from him was coming from my belly. This was an alien baby. I was pregnant. Chapter 30, Earth Medicine 33 bullets, I was pregnant. I stood in a weird sort of shock. I was preparing for a baby in 3 years. Not today. But as we sat in silence and then N let me process, my thoughts were dripping in tappiness. Drip. 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 I had always wanted to be a mother. And really, when the N first told me about his planet, I was ready. But as the possibility dropped into darkness with my implant, the idea slid away. Now it was back as a tidal wave, crashing me into the ground. I had to be ready. How do you get ready for a baby on an alien planet? I needed my mom. Mom badass, right? I was pregnant. I would have a baby and then get to go home. My ticket was practically printed. Happiness flowed. I was going home. But I was happy for more than that. And I realized I was happy that I was pregnant. I was happy that this was my child. New life. Then N and I had created life. A grin started to spread over my face, and then N looked up adoringly. Happy, he sighed. I nodded serenely. Happy. He jumped to his feet and flipped me into his arms, spinning me around. Holding on, I couldn't help but give a joyful laugh. He sat me back down and pulled me tight against his chest. The grin had never left his lips. His eyes glistened to me, and I had to bite my cheek to resist his gravity. You're going to be a daddy. Then Anne's baby. He rested his forehead against mine. Then Anne'll baby. Yeah, I agreed. Ours. He pulled me back into an embrace and stayed that way for a long time. I was trying to picture us as a family, huddled by some fire, probably in a clay hut home. A pink bundle in Anne's arms. Or blue. I guess it didn't matter which as long as it was healthy. I stiffened. Healthy. Oh my gosh. The implant. What would that do to a growing fetus? Would it cause birth defects? Maybe. I couldn't remember. It could hurt the baby. Then Ed. I yelled and he stepped back in alarm. We have to get the implant out now. His eyes shifted to not understanding, and I pointed to the rod. Earth medicine. Her baby. His eyes widened as he took in what I said. Turning quick, I marched back to camp and dug through the packs until I found his dagger. His hands were surrounding my wrist. No, Hertel. My glance was deadly at him. Little Hertel or big hurt baby. He growled and took the dagger from me. No, hurt baby. I crumpled. That's not what I mean, an N. I tried to think how to say it. Little Hertel. Medicine cut out. I pointed to the knife in my arm. No kill earth medicine. I pointed to my belly. Big hurt, baby. He must have got the gist because he nearly tripped backwards over his own feet, righting himself at the last second. He looked at the dagger in hesitation. Hurt baby. Right. He nodded solemnly. Hertel. Just a little bit. I'll be okay. But we have to cut it out. Kill medicine. He spoke to himself and then stood tall like he was preparing. Yeah, that's right. We have to kill the medicine in my arm. He wouldn't look me in the eyes but reached for my arm and guided me to a fallen log. It'll be okay. He maneuvered my arm so it was open wide and ready across it. I took a deep breath in preparation too. Without the numbing shot, this wasn't going to be fun. But at least it would be less painful than the shreds in my back. He stared at the implant area and growled, but the minute ticked by and he still hadn't done it. I can do it. I reached for the dagger. He held it back from me. Not a... Oyu KWS EIUK wens a yochai. I kayakal and ikingbok wanieli. A WUNM and law. He looked resigned. Inzios gone with. Another moment passed and then he huffed out a breath. He lifted the dagger high into the air, holding it strong with both hands. I yanked my arm back from the edge of the wood. Marak Spidey, my fated mate. White splashed around me and my wheels spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Whoa there, Dothraki. Hold up. What are you going to do? Chop off my arm. It just needs. And then I stopped and looked him over. Oh, you really thought. Oh, my hands came out in front of me, no. No, you don't need to chop off my arm for this. No wonder you were so adamant on not cutting me. The dagger lowered to one hand as he watched me. I giggled at him and then pointed to the area right at the implant. Little cut. Little hurt. I pinched just the smallest amount of skin and made a tiny indent with my fingernail. See, little. He stood stoic, so I grabbed the dagger from him. He let me take it. I guess this really is a better time for me to do it. I put a branch between my teeth again and dug the dagger point in just at the end of the implant. I cursed into the wood. Then N growled his disapproval but was staying back. Blood pooled at the area when I pressed in further than I probably should have. Really wish I had Gia's doctor skills right about now. I handed the dagger back to the N and then cried into the branch again while I started pressing on the area trying to budge the slippery rod. "Come out, you!" And I probably used a few of Molly's choice sailor words after that. The wound was stinging and dripping clear down my arm, but I couldn't stop now. I was trying to keep breathing, even though they were coming out in pulses. With another press, the white tip finally broke through the skin. There it is. I took a few more pulsing breaths and then yanked on the edge, dislodging it the rest of the way from my arm. I held the little jerk up in celebration. Then N stared at it like earth medicine was all disgusting frog guts and eyes of newt. I chucked it to the ground and took a deep breath. All right. I think we're good. Baby good. His glance had followed the implant, but shot to mine. Baby good. I nodded. Baby is good. He grinned wide for a moment, until he looked back at my arm. It hurt. Agreeing, I looked over the blood. Yeah, a bit. I pointed to the basket. Got any bandits? He grabbed a bit of grail in and then took a few minutes cleaning and wrapping the area C. I held up my arm. All good. Just a little hurt. Not my whole arm. I winked. He grinned. He stood and grabbed a water bottle and handed it to me. Stay. Stay, I asked. Then giggled. You didn't get enough wolf time. Go mark your tree, big guy. I'll be okay. Emergency over. He gave a peck and then ran off to the trees. I did kind of like that angle with just the Tarzan scraps. Chapter 31, Glimpse of Black 33 Bullets. Walking after them and found out I was pregnant was going at a stinking snail's pace. I needed to get back to Molly even more so now that I was having a baby. She'd had alien babies. She was sure to be able to give me a bit more information on all pregnancies than anyone else. But then Ed hovered over me like a mother hen. AWW, a mother hen. I miss my chickens. Focus. I guess it makes sense. This will be the third baby on the whole darn planet. Even normal Earth dads hover. My brother waited on his wife hand and foot. Well, for the first baby anyway. If I even made a bit of a yawn or looked at a potential seat too long, he would have me laying down for 15 minutes. It was tedious. He was being ridiculous. We hadn't even made it back to where we camped last in the days. I was starting to feel better. The nauseous episodes were getting fewer and far between, but the craving for raw meat was skyrocketing. That's Spidey, my faded mate. White splashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. I hadn't admitted to that one. Yet this was going to be a long 9 months. And Anen seemed so surprised that I agreed to raw meat the day far back. I couldn't imagine him seeing Molly chow down on uncooked hamburger often. Maybe he was expecting me to like it, and when I got sick that was the problem. Who knows? And while I was feeling better, my pants had grown tighter and tighter. My extra pair of pants wouldn't fit her soon, even unbuttoned. Was I already showing? Taking my 100th break since lunch, I sat on a rock and looked down over my belly. It really did seem like there was a bit of a bump there. Unbuttoning my pants, I gave my stomach a breather from its entrapment and roamed fingers over the heavy heat there. The heat was growing too. Now it was just over an inch above my belly button and rounding wider on the sides too. Then Anne put the packs down and came and kneeled in front of me, hands bracing over the emerging bump. It was becoming his favorite place to be. Night times would have him wrapped around me, hands over my belly and every waking minute between. I didn't quite mind. I didn't know what the baby thought, but I responded to his heat. It was soothing and peaceful, like a breath of fresh air after a long ocean dive. So I just let him do it whenever he wanted. I didn't see the big deal about people grabbing your stomach. I guess that I've only ever had him around, so I couldn't speak for Earth women. What was it that my sis-in-law's pregnancy shirt said? If you didn't put the baby in, or are going to take it out, don't touch the belly, I guess then Anne did put the baby in. It was kosher. Now why was I already having a belly to touch? Is it just me? Or should I not have to wear maternity pants for like 6 more months? I was what? A week along. 2 weeks along. Counting on my fingers. My period wasn't even due for another 7 days. That would barely make the baby setting up camp. Right. It wasn't the first time I desperately wanted to check Google. Only vaguely could I remember my sister-in-law's symptoms and timeline to a pregnancy, but she had a similar size to me and she didn't even show until 4 months in. Is this right? Should I be bonpen yet? I was going to be as big as a cow when this baby got through with me. He grinned and kissed just above my belly button. Indiana kehula ibn kulu. Sure. And telu. I agreed with his nonsense. After a few minutes of rest, he grabbed out my cell phone and gave it to me. The Nen movie. I giggled. He'd been begging to see his war stories monologue movie about me and the dragon every day for the last week. I'd had to make sure to set the solar charger out every stop so there was enough juice to power it. You sure like your TV. I unlocked the phone and found his video. But before I could even press the play button, he grabbed it from me and pressed on his own. His mouth wide into a full grin, and when it was over he handed it back to me. Dud. He'd been acting like he needed to make sure it was still there every day. It was fun to see him so excited to see it. Maybe they didn't have much technology on his planet. Or at least I hadn't seen any yet. I was thinking his planet was set in like an Iron Age time frame. Not much technology, but they made daggers and jewelry, so they had to have some metal workers. Maybe if they had more village-like places, I could see that we weren't living in caveman times. I lifted my shirt higher and then took a snapshot of my belly. Guess it's time to start documenting the bump too. Though it made me sad that I'd never get to print them out, huh? If I brought all this stuff with me, my cell phone included, I could probably take it back. My mom would love to see baby photos of my little surrogate alien child. It made me smile. After I earned my ticket home, at least I wouldn't forget these cute aliens. Leaning down, so then N could be in the pic too, I took a selfie. My friends would never believe my story. I could hear them now. Pix Eleanor. Pix or it didn't happen. In another day we passed where we had stopped with Kane, so we were getting somewhere. Slowly, but surely, we were getting there. We came to a large valley with tall lavender grasses and I stopped to gaze over the beauty. Then N decided that was my need to stop and picked me up by my waist and placed me on a boulder nearly the size of myself. Werewolf, he asked, pointing to the valley. My glance shot over the land. Where? He chuckled and tapped his heart. The Nen werewolf. Righto. Okay. I smiled my acceptance. He took a few steps away and dropped his pants, rolling them tight for his pouch and then bent into his wolf form. Wolf eyes glanced back to me and I waved. Then he held into the air and started a run around the whole valley. It was fascinating to watch him. He became a gray blur and I could only barely keep my eyes on his form. Kind of like a tennis match where your head really has to move to follow the ball. I felt like I was really having to concentrate to keep his image in view. When he'd been taking laps for a few minutes, my eye caught a movement of black a couple yards from the rock. Something small meandering between the grasses. I watched the spot, but nothing was there that I could see between the tall grass. It had disappeared before I could get a good look. Black was the color of those bat frogs, so I wasn't sure if I should be scared or not. I kept scanning around the area and almost decided that I didn't see anything when I caught another glance of black between the grasses at the base of the rock. I knew it could be any number of snakes or bitey rats, so I stayed on the rock, even tucking my feet above the grasses and craned my neck to look down at it. There was no sound, no movement, no black. It got me nervous. I could still see the Nen's fuzzy outline in the valley and wanted him to check if it was just a frog. So I cupped my mouth and yelled. The Nen. The moment I did, a pop sounded like someone put a pin in a balloon, and my right leg felt like someone dipped me in lava. I screamed as vision blurred with agony. It was like white-hot torture, someone stabbing a pickaxe into my calf and the skin melting off from acid. A fire-breathing dragon was crushing me, shredding me away to nothing. I couldn't think. I couldn't do. I was just motions and a screeching voice. My hands darted to my leg to hold on the pain when the N's hands slapped them away. My screaming had never stopped. He lifted me into his arms and was yelling gibberish in his own language. It felt far away. I couldn't even tell if he was angry or caring. I only knew that arms were around me and air was traveling over my leg. Each breath of wind like thousands of nails assailing me. I couldn't focus on anything but pain. Suddenly I was submerged in ice-cold water. The fiery heat of pain to the icy chill of water pressing my body into shock. I didn't get a full breath in before I passed out. Chapter 32, Venom Spray 33 bullets. I ached like I ran a marathon. Muscles sore and tight, but I was comfortable in a soft bed somewhere. The gentle trace of a blanket over the top of me. A calming fire cackled in the background. Scent of roasting meat seeped into my nose. My eyes opened, and it took a second for me to recognize surroundings. But when I did, I screamed. It was the cave of the assault. I skimmed around for my gun. The werewolves were after me again. LL. Then N's face was in my view then, hushing my throat. My breaths came in quick bursts, and I remembered that I should be okay. I had killed those werewolves. They were not coming back after me. Max Spidey. Why, they didn't eat. Whites flashed around me, and my wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. What's going on? Why are we back here? Was all I got to before I tried to swing my legs off the bed, any of thousands of pins and needles coming alive in my right leg. It knocked the breath clear out of me. Like 50 daggers pressing into my leg. From my knee down, my whole leg stung with the scorching bite. I didn't scream. I made some kind of garbled cry and immediately froze any movement. The pain dulled. Then I begged. What happened to me? Memories of being on the rock and then being dipped in acid came inching back. The pain wasn't as intense now, and more of a deadening ache. I pressed a toe down and the pain split open again. I screamed out. It was like my foot had been asleep for 100 years, and now it was slowly coming back. The sharp stabs of life cutting through me at any insignificant movement. Tossing off the blanket, I looked down over my leg. I almost expected it not to be there. But it was, just barely. I was not wearing jeans or shoes, and my entire leg from the knee down was covered in black tar. Recoiling from the sight, I began to panic. Then my leg. He grabbed my face in his hands, letting the heat seep into calm. But he wasn't calm himself. Ill hurt. Medicine. H. My eyes pricked with tears, and I sniffed my pains back as I looked into his eyes. I never realized that he had such dark brown eyes before, even flecked with gold. It was striking. The pads of his thumbs caught the wetness at the corner of my eye, and he pulled me into a hug. His relief was like a wave over me, and then his hands roved down my body to rest over my belly. Another worry dawned on me. Then, is the baby okay? I glanced over the bump that seemed visually bigger, even to me. How long was I out? A month. Couldn't be more than a day too. My hand came beside where he placed his cheek, and I breathed out in relief when the heat still shone brightly there. She's okay. I exhaled, making up a gender on the spot. He leaned back up and looked down my leg. His face still yelled of the worry on his heart. I bent and thumbed through the tar. It was a paste thick as wet concrete and black as night. What is this? Medicine. My face shone skepticism. Was this what hurt me instead? Medicine. He agreed. With a bit to my nose, there was a floral and earth odor about it. Almost pretty. And with the silky feel between my fingers, It had a mud-like quality to it. Is this activated charcoal? We have something like it on Earth. It's healing. It draws out poisons. Looking back down my foot, I tried to press my toes to a point and again clenched in an unbelievable invisible scream. My foot was still scorching like it was asleep. I could breathe, only as long as I didn't move it an inch. I pointed to the leg in hopelessness. What is it? What happened? Sakuma H. Sakuma H. He spoke gravely. I knew the word, but I couldn't remember what it meant. Sako M.A. I asked. He reached to the side and I turned to see my gun and pouch there. He grabbed my pouch and stroked the skunk fur. Sakuma H. And then he bent over my leg. What? I asked in surprise. Wait, a skunk did this. I didn't dare move my leg again as I let it sink in. A viper skunk. The snake fangs hinted at venom, and I had even had the random thought that viper skunks maybe shot venom instead of stink. That pop. Was that what happened? A skunk was wandering around the rock and then my holler to then ends cared it and it sprayed me. How bad was its venom? Did I dare look? Did I need to look? I bit my lip. Is it bad? I leaned down and tried to swipe the charcoal away from my calf. Then N grabbed my hand before I was fingertips in. I need to see. I spoke cautiously. He gave a growling sound low in his throat, but nodded nervous eyes. With another exhale, I pressed through the sticky mass and where my leg should have been. I could dip in 2 inches extra. Something hard stopped my sink and I tapped it. The simple tap shot a zing all the way up my leg with burning lightning. Bone. Unburying my fingers and sitting back in scare, I looked in horror to that N and panicked. How deep? It burned my whole lid away. Watching over my blackened leg, I tried to get my breathing under control. It wasn't working. It's freaking burned away. It doesn't hurt. Why does it not hurt? No hurt. Then N shook his head and pammed down my cheek like I was about to die. There had to be some kind of nerve damage that didn't sink until I moved. Testing my theory, I twisted my ankle only millimeters to the side. It had me crying out in pain again, the pins and needles back with a vengeance. Then N kissed my forehead and tucked me against himself. If he would allow himself to cry, I'm sure he would be at this moment. Was I going to die? After all the mess I'd been through, a skunk was what was going to end my time here. Then N sure made it seem so. Really? A skunk. A stupid skunk. I fought dragons and werewolves. I licked over my dry lips and leaned back against the cave wall. At least I had the medicine on my leg. Benin knew a lot more about the healing herbs on his planet than I did. Maybe he could do something. Maybe I'd still survive. Maybe I was looking into his curving and frame too much. Maybe he was just sad that I got hurt. Or that the baby could have been hurt, and all on his watch. He hadn't taken as many disappears since we found out I was pregnant, and maybe this run was an extension of that. He probably felt like it was his fault. I rubbed over his hand. It's not your fault, big guy. He was sure going to think it was his fault if I did die, though. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would get better. Yeah, right. Regrowing a whole leg. You're not a lizard, Eleanor. How do you regrow muscle? Maybe I would survive. But be all deformed with no calf muscle or skin. Just the idea was grossing me out. At least it didn't hurt when stationary. Then Ed. Can I have some water or something? I don't want to think about this anymore. Mattered Spidey. My faded mate. White splashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. He nodded and lifted, walking back into the cave and returned with a water pouch and some bread. It lifted my spirits a little to see the bread and teased a soft smile to my lips. I guess there are positives to being back in the wolf cave. Then N crouched beside me and handed me the items, smiling himself. He kissed my forehead. All safe. Maybe, was all I grumbled back. I really wanted to say I was dead. Dead Eleanor to add to the list of people that this planet has taken. Thanks a bunch for joining me on this tryst with a werewolf. I hope you had an amazing time exploring this mysterious world with me. Make sure to subscribe, leave your comments and likes, and I'll see you in the next tryst. Bye for now. Thanks a bunch for joining me on this tryst with a werewolf. I hope you had an amazing time exploring this mysterious world with me. Make sure to subscribe, leave your comments and likes, and I'll see you in the next tryst. Bye for now.